Hello everyone, I'm Kevin with My Shop Assist. In this video, I'm going to go over how to get started using My Shop Assist. I'm going to go over setting up the shop, adding users, adding tasks and parts, and then creating your first job. It's basically going to be for people that have never used the system before. If you're new to us, or if you are an existing shop that's trying to transfer over to a different shop management system, I'll show you over how to do all that stuff in this video. So to get started, once you've actually created the account on the login page, or the sign up page, it's going to bring you into basically a empty shop. And so I have one here. This is just a test shop I created. I have one user. I'm just using Bert Monroe, the test user here. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set up the shop. So you're going to go over on the left-hand navigation bar and you're going to go into the shop settings. And this first tab here, most of it should already be filled in from the same information you put in on the sign-up page. We have a couple other things on here. They're not really used for much right now, so if you do want to populate these, you can. This thing will be coming soon. And then the shop hours at the bottom here, what it is used for the calendar, and it will show open and close sections on the calendar if you want it to. I will say that most people do not use this part of the shop settings, but you can if you need to. If you feel like your scheduling is going to be really critical, you can populate it in here. Okay, so one important part here is this name of the shop here. This will be used for logging in if you don't use your email. So if you change it, just know that it can make it so you can't log in because you need to use the current name that's in this field. So this is a very important one. The second tab, I'm going to skip over the first part of this, but the second part, if you have a shop logo or business logo, you can upload that here and it will appear on like your work order printouts, emails, that sort of thing. So this is a useful feature here if you want to customize your shop a little bit. This third tab is going to be where a bulk of the setup work is going to be. Okay, so the first and most important one is determining what type of work you do. If you're an automotive shop and you only work on cars, you want this to say always work on vehicles. If you're kind of maybe like a custom fab shop, but you work on cars, but you also work on just things like maybe somebody brings you like a manifold and you need to weld on it. In that case, you might not always need to use a year, make, model. And so what this will do is when you're adding in jobs, it will ask you first the customer information, and then the next step will be the vehicle information. If this says always or sometimes. If this says never, if you select never from here, when you're creating a job, it will not ask you for a year, make, model. It will skip over that step and it'll go straight to the job description. So this would be more for like maybe a transmission shop, a machine shop, something that you don't actually ever get the vehicle in, but you do have like products that you work on. And I fall into the sometimes category because I don't always work on the car. Most of the time I do, but not always. I do just build engines for people sometimes. And in those cases, I'm not using a year, make, model. So I'll leave this as sometimes so I can demonstrate what both of them do. And we do also have the ability to select what type of vehicles you work on. So if you do work on boats, we have some marinas that use the system, and they would turn off the automobiles and turn on boats. I'm just going to kind of go down all this stuff here and explain it one at a time. The labor rate is going to be important. Basically, every task you create is going to have a cost. And there's 3 different ways you can configure it. Labor rate will be the default for hourly people. So if you're doing anything hourly, set this as your default rate. So maybe 150 is your shop rate. Maybe it's higher, maybe it's lower. You just determine what that is and you put it in there. So moving forward, every task I create on a job will start with the labor rate of 150. You can customize from there, but this is going to be the starting point. Same goes for tax rate. If you set this now, you can always change it later, but if you don't set the tax rate initially and you start creating jobs, those first jobs will be created with the 0 tax rate. And there is no way to retroactively change the tax on jobs. You can always message us and we can correct it if you've made that mistake already. But we don't retroactively do it because if your tax rate actually does change, you don't want to change all your completed jobs. So for example, if your state raises the tax rate from 7.5 to 8.25, all the jobs you created at 7.5 need to remain that way, and jobs moving forward need to be the new 8.25%. And so that's why we don't retroactively change it. but you can set it here, and you should set it initially so it reflects what your current tax rate is. Some of these other things are a little less important. Show comments on invoices. Comments are a thing you can do inside of a task, which will appear on the job. And some of them get very long, especially if you're doing restorations and you have one task that may have hundreds of hours on it, and people are tracking all their notes and whatnot on it. QuickBooks does not allow more than 4,000 characters, I believe, on an individual line item. And if you do long comments or a lot of comments, it won't export. And so you can turn this on and off to maybe allow you to export a job even if it has long comments, because it just doesn't send the comments to QuickBooks. That's really all that's for. This is a QuickBooks thing. Same goes for the show checklist. If you don't want the checklist items on the invoice, you can turn this on and off. If you never want any of them on there, or completed items only, or always all the checklist items. The bar reg number and the EPA number, these are really for California automotive shops. These are numbers that they are given for their compliance stuff they have. So if you are a California shop, you would be using these two for sure. And then the default task pricing. I mentioned that there are 3 different types of pricing for tasks, which is reflected in the labor rate here. Hourly is just going to be strictly how many hours your guys are tracking. So every task we have in here has a start and stop timer, and you can just track your hours as you go, and that would be hourly. Fixed price is going to be more like, I do a lot of fixed price stuff where it's just like, hey, I am going to replace your brake rotors, and the brake rotors are quantity of 1, and I charge $225 to do it, or whatever your price may be. Book hours is going to be like how like a dealership will do it, where they say, oh, we already know that these brake rotors take 1.5 hours. And then it's going to take that 1.5 estimated hours and multiply it by your labor rate. And so all it will do is show your estimated hours and the labor rate you have. It doesn't show your actual hours on the invoice. So that's just 3 different ways. And every task is configurable independently. So this is not like setting all of them. It's just setting the default. So when you create a new task, it will start on what you select from here, and then you can change it from there. These 2 items here are largely for people that are importing parts or task lists. These are just buttons. If you import a task list or import a parts list and they don't have task or tax on them, you can click this and it will go through your entire list and add tax to every item in your parts and services list inside MSA, depending on which one you click. It's more for like a post-processing thing more so than you don't have to do this at the beginning because there's no parts or tasks in the shop yet. And then these are going to be more like shop configuration stuff. I'll kind of go through them all one at a time because some of them are important and some of them are less necessary. So obviously these 2 right here, tax new services and tax new parts. Every time you add a part, maybe you need to have tax on it because at least in Texas, all parts are taxed. Services in Texas, anything custom is taxed, but anything that is like a general repair stuff is not taxed. So you can, each item can be different, and so it kind of depends. But by default, I just leave it off because most of what I do is going to be repairs. And then when I do custom work or hourly stuff, I have to turn a tax on for it. Show warning when the inspection is incomplete. We do have like a DVI, which is like a digital vehicle inspection or video inspection or whatever, however you want to call it. We allow you to like inspect the vehicle before the job is all the way completed, and you can have this warning on here if you don't do the inspection that you need to go back and do it, and it will be visible inside of a job. Require users to submit notes when clocking out. This is more like a preference thing. Some people really want to have their employees make note of what they did every day, and so when they clock out with the clock out button, a little pop-up will appear with a text field where they can type in what they did for the day. Some of these are like visual things. So total hours on job details page can be hidden. So if you turn that off, or if you turn it on, it will hide the total hours on the job details page so the customers can't see the total hours that you tracked. And then the show part numbers to customers, another one. Visually on their work order or invoice number, it just won't show the part numbers. A lot of performance shops don't like to show part numbers because if you create an estimate and send it to somebody, they just take all the part numbers and order them themselves. Less common in general repair because they don't even install customer supplied parts. and there's way higher margins on everything general repair than there is aftermarket. So same goes for show estimated hours and work order, another visualization queue. Require authorization. This is an important one, especially like California. A lot of states require you to have signatures on anything you do to a customer car. If you click this, there will be a warning on every job that you need to get a signature. You can click the warning and it will bring you into the authorization box. So we can get signatures on all the work you're doing. If you work more than what was on the authorized amount, it will pop up with another warning saying, hey, you need to get another signature because the total for the job is above what the customer authorized. So it will just keep asking you as long as you keep working on the job. Odometer warning. This is if you're using vehicles. It will a warning that will say, hey, you didn't track the mileage on this thing before you took it in. Subfolders within jobs. This is an important one if you do big projects. So basically all the restoration shops, hot rod shops, those guys all are going to be using this because their jobs are very substantial, and it is a great way for you to kind of divide out the work within a job. So for example, you could have a paint and body folder, you could have an engine folder, you could have a chassis folder, you could have an electronics folder. You can break them down really detailed like that and then have tasks within those folders related to the folder title. And I can demonstrate how this works as well. Show scheduled by field. This is just when you're creating the job. It's a marker for who created the job. So if you ever have an issue with it, you can go back to see who created it. And default subservices and parts selected. This is going to be for groups. So we allow you to make a task group with parts on it. So like for example, you have the brake rotor install task, and then you could have the centric brake rotors, or the Hawk brake pads, or whatever it is, the parts you may have associated with that task, you can have them in there. And then you can have them default being selected or not selected. For example, if I'm doing a clutch install, I might have 3 options for clutches. I might have the OEM clutch, I might have the ACT clutch, I might have the Exedi clutch. I want to have that unselected, and then I'm going to manually select which clutch I want to use. So in that case, I would unselect this like that. But that's what that is for. It's for groups. If you want to require your work order number, and you can have it automatically increment and start here. This is something, if you're not using QuickBooks, you can create your own work order numbers. Like basically every extended warranty company, every insurance company, they all want a work order number when you're working with them. So we let you turn this on. If you're pulling it from QuickBooks, you don't need to create your own, and then you can just sync the job to QuickBooks immediately, and it will fetch a work order number from QuickBooks. Or you can make your own, and it will push the number into QuickBooks. Below here, we have the legal disclaimer. So this will show up on the authorizations. So both the pre-work inspection and on any follow-up authorizations, it will show the waiver or the legal disclaimer / waiver on here. Appointment reminder text message. This is for text messaging and or if you are sending email appointment reminders. This is just the message that appears on there. And the last thing on this page is a location-specific clock in and clock out. This is going to be basically a whitelisted IP list for clocking in and clocking out. So if you only want your technicians clocking in at the physical shop, you can add the IP address for the shop here, and then nobody will be able to clock in and clock out from their house or in their car. They have to be at the shop to do it through the router or IP address. And then the last thing that... if you want to be able to communicate with your customers through My Shop Assist, you can turn on this feature here, and it will fetch a phone number. And once it has the phone number, then it will allow you to text message customers. It usually only takes a second. In this case, the phone number that I'm using is fake for the shop, so it's not going to give me a number. So this is just a made-up number. I just typed in a bunch of gibberish. If this is a real number, we look at this number's location, and we'll give you a number here, and it will be an actual phone number, and it will be a VoIP number essentially that we use for text messaging customers. And we can text message them pictures, notes. They can even call the number, and we just forward that number to this physical number right here. And so that will allow you to use this number to really communicate well with your customers. It is a fantastic feature. I use it probably more than anything now. If you don't want to communicate with your customers, you can just leave this off and it won't fetch a number for you. And then going through the rest of the shop settings on here, this little magnifying glass here is going to be for your shop inspection checklist or your vehicle inspection checklist. And it doesn't have to be vehicle, it could be just job inspection. So you could say like, okay, so we have a checklist item that says inspect items provided and make notes of what there was there. So like if you allow customers to bring in like their own products, or maybe it's a machine shop and you want to inspect like the engine block or the head before you start work on it, this might be a checklist item you want to do. Maybe you work on cars and you want to inspect the exterior of the car for dents and scratches. So we got, this is just an example. You can have as many as you want in here, and every one of these will be a pass, fail, and then you can also put notes for every single one of them. And if you check this box here, it will also require you to upload a picture or a video. So you can do either of those in this case. Makes it very handy for kind of like ensuring that you're not going to be liable for any damage on cars that's pre-existing. So if you do document it, you can always it will and will ask you for a signature after you're done with the documentation. Then the customer knows that, hey, we saw this dent on the trunk of your car. We know it's there. And then when they pick the car up, they can't be like, hey, you know, like this dent wasn't there before. And then you can show them the picture. Say, hey, you know, like we inspected it. We took a picture of it. You signed on it. It was there before we started work. That's what this is going to be for. It's important if you really want to track that stuff. I will admit that I don't do this very often, mostly because I have found it's very, very rare for people to blame stuff on you. And when it does, it sucks, but it's quite rare. I guess if you're working on higher end stuff, it might be a little more important because it's more expensive to repair. I work on Mitsubishi Evos, which nearly all of them are dented and scratched already because they're all 25 years old. So this little clock here is going to be for your subscription settings. So if you need to change like the card you have on file with MSA, you can click here. And we use Stripe, so it's going to link you into the Stripe system. And then you can select, like maybe you're on a monthly plan and you want to switch to an annual to save a little bit of money. You can do all that here. Or if you need to change or update your card or cancel anything, you can do it here. The calculator, this is going to be for setting up QuickBooks. I'm not going to do that in this video because I have separate videos for it. But if you select QuickBooks Desktop or Online, that's where you're going to be setting these up, and then you can sync them all. And I'll post a link in the comments on how to go through and set up the QuickBooks stuff. Same goes for the credit card processing. So we can handle credit card processing within MSA. So if you want to use our system, we do it through a partner called 360 Payments. If you click this button right here, they will contact you in person, and they'll set it up. And they have permissions to go in here and actually set up the card swiping machine and the virtual terminals. So you can text message, email bills to customers so they can pay remotely. And they also give you a credit card terminal, so you can do in-person tap, swipe, that sort of stuff, or manual key in. If you want to do all that, you just click this button right here and then go through the process with 360 Payments to get it all synced up to your checking account, and then making sure everything works. And the last one is going to be the discounts and fees. And so every invoice you create, you can add different fees to it, such as like you can add a 2% credit card fee. You can add a military discount fee. Maybe you offer 10% discount, and you can even configure them to be like on parts only or on services only. So if you only want to give a discount on parts for 10% to military, you can do that. If you want to do a fixed amount, you can do that as well. So like if you're just offering a $200 gift card, you can do essentially you could do a discount of $200 in here. And these are all created inside of the job if you want. So you can create new fees and discounts inside of the job, and this is just a list of them of what you have. Okay, so that's kind of configuring the shop. So that's everything we've got for setting everything up as far as the shop is concerned. The next step of what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to add users. So you're going to start on the dashboard here, and the second tab is going to be the user tab. So if you click this one here, I've already got myself in here because I'm the one that created the account. But if you need to add more users, you're just going to click add new user here. And then as you go through this stuff, Okay, another fake number. This is also where you'll be setting up your password. This starting page, you can't see the drop down because this screen capture software doesn't show it, but this is just a list of all the pages. Most people are going to start on the dashboard, so if you select dashboard from the drop down, that's what your home page will be. Some people, like if they're a scheduling person, the job calendar is going to be more what they're going to be using. I use the calendar extensively, so that's also one that I could use it as my homepage because it's pretty useful for me. But if you're just a technician, you may not ever need the job calendar. So then in that case, you might want to just look at the jobs page, which would be a job search, or also the zones page. There's one called zones. The role, this is going to be important for setting up people. So technician and manager are really the only two that you need to know about. Managers are going to have full functionality. And then technicians, you can customize the functionality. So if you want the person to have access to everything, you make them a manager. If you want to configure what they can and cannot do, you make them a technician. And I'll show you the example here as a technician here. And then the last thing on this tab here, the completed jobs go to zone. Right now I only have two options, which is active and completed. What this is going to mean is when you complete a job, like you mark all the tasks inside of the job as done, the job will automatically show as completed. And then once I have completed that job, it's going to move to this zone. And this is important because the way we work this system is we preload all the jobs into your browser's cache when you log in, and it makes the page work super, super fast. And then we use updates to the server with all the people who are logged in to send data back and forth. That way you're not having to reload everything on every time you click a page, which makes the pages really slow and sluggish. For example, QuickBooks is super slow to use because that's what it's doing, whereas ours is lightning fast because nearly everything is already on your browser, so you're not even pinging the server for anything unless you make a change. And so the exception to that is when a job is in the completed zone, we don't preload it because many shops have hundreds or thousands of jobs that are done, and you don't need to preload those into your browser's cache. If you're looking to search for something, we'll search through the completed list, but just as far as loading in stuff to get started when you're first logging in, we don't need any of those jobs. So my recommendation is always have the jobs move into the completed zone, so that way they don't keep accumulating in your active jobs list and slowing down your load times. So that's what I would recommend. And then right here is an avatar. So your users can each have an avatar, like a picture of their face, or if you leave it blank, it's just going to be their initials in a circle, and the circle will be based on the color you select here. So if I select red, the circle will be red with my initials KD. As far as the other features that user settings are going to go, so we're going to go through these here. So this is a technician. Technicians are going to have this little lock, and this is going to be permissions. This is where you're going to customize what each person can and cannot do. So this is like allowing them to maybe edit payments on a job. Maybe you don't want your technicians to ever see the payments or be able to fix them. So you would leave this unselected. But maybe they do need to be able to delete, like jobs, parts, and tasks out of a job. And then maybe you also want them to be able to, maybe you want to allow them to edit shop parts and shop tasks. This is just going to be like your list of stuff that you have as far as the shop goes that you add into each job. If you leave these unclicked, technicians cannot add to those lists. And I will tell you that a lot of people will let their technicians do it until their lists get filled with junk. For example, what happens is if you allow technicians to add in tasks themselves, you get something called oil change. Then you get something called change oil. Then it's oil change BMW. Then it's oil change Mercedes. Then it's change the oil. And then eventually you wind up having 10 different versions of oil changes, and basically they're all the same thing. And it just clutters up your system. And so managers generally, after realizing what happens, they turn this function off. So technicians cannot add stuff to the shop's master list. And then you use like a catch-all, like a miscellaneous labor, and then you put in the description for it. Hey, we needed to change the oil on a Porsche. Okay, and so that's what these two are going to be pretty important for kind of keeping your lists clean. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Like if you want them to be able to edit their own time clock, turn that on. Generally, not often do I see technicians being able to edit their own time. But if you don't want to do it yourself, then you can let them do it here. Editing the shop. Some of these features may or may not be more for like a shop manager that doesn't necessarily need to do stuff on a job, but they do need to edit the shop as they go. And so you can just kind of see how this all goes here. I'm not going to go through all of them. There's quite a few of them. Customer chat on the bottom one is an important one. If you turn this on, you're enabling this user to text message with the customers. They will always be able to see the incoming messages, but if you click this, then they will be able to send outgoing messages. Again, this is if you want your technicians being able to communicate with the customers, turn it on. Otherwise, just leave it up to the managers. The last two tabs here, this is going to be like individual user settings. So these are, like a manager doesn't necessarily need to do this. Just let the technician do all these settings here. It doesn't change any functionality as far as like what they're allowed to do, but it does change how things view. So like, for example, if you let them communicate with the customers, you may want them to have the audible alert when a message is received. That way they know a customer texted them back, they can hear it. These next 4, or really 5, are how a job is viewed. So depending on what you have checked here, it might show more information on the job view. Whereas the last one just expands everything. It's the maximum amount of detail you can see, but it also makes the page very long if you have big jobs, so there's a lot of scrolling involved. These next 2 are going to be like just if you clock in at the beginning of the day, or rather if you start a timer on a job but forgot to clock in, it will let you know to clock in. And the opposite for clocking out. If you clock out with a job timer still running, it will tell you to stop the job timer. Jobs per day on the calendar. This is going to be for viewing the calendar. If you need to see more jobs on a day, just increase this. It's purely a visual thing. It will still let you schedule as many jobs as you need per day. And then the last 2, this is just a visual cue. I actually like this more so than the mini calendar here. And you can see it on the right hand side. This is a mini calendar. If you were to click this little envelope here, this is your most recent messages. This is just setting that as the permanent setting. And then this is a really customized thing for a specific shop, so I won't even worry about it. And then we do have the notification bar at the top right. If you want to notify or get notifications for anything, again, this is user-specific stuff. So if you want to know if a payment has been received, I think that one's super important if you're using the credit card processing and you're sending out payment requests to people via text or email. If you turn this on, you'll know immediately when they have paid the bill. Same goes for authorizations. If you're messaging out authorizations to customers, once they have signed it, you'll get a notification for it. And then another good one is when a job has been completed, so you know that it's been done. Some of these other things, like a new job and task, this can really clutter up your notifications. I personally don't recommend using them, but people asked for it, so we allow you to do it if you want to. So that's kind of the gist of it. So that kind of gets you through setting up the shop, adding your users and setting up your users. If you need to edit users, just click this Manage User button, and you can come in here and you can always just deactivate them or edit them or customize them. Okay, so that's for users and shop settings. The next thing you want to do to get going is you really need to start just creating some basic tasks and basic parts. And then I'll walk you through creating the first job. And then I have videos for all the details of everything in here that you can watch. So let's get started. If you want to add a task, you can do it from this backend. So I clicked on tasks on the left-hand navigation bar and I clicked add task. This is actually the slower way to add tasks. You can add them on the fly inside of a job. But I'm just going to build a couple of them just to show you how this works. So this is going to just be test task 1, and the description will be we will set the pricing to be hourly. We'll just say the estimated hours is 5, and hourly rate is going to be $150. Okay. And I actually forgot to save all our settings in here. That's why none of it. Okay. Now that I have saved all the settings I set, we go into this task, we can edit it, you can see what we put in here. So hourly 150. Now when we add our next task, we'll call this we see we have our default hourly 150. Maybe we want this one to be book hours, so we'll make this 2 hours, and we're just going to save it if it's taxed or not. Common tasks is going to show up on the job creation, and I'll show you how that works next. And we'll add one more task just so we got a variation of them. And we are going to make this in a fixed price, and we're just going to make it $750. And I'll make this a common task as well. Okay, so I got a book hour, a fix, and hourly. I got 3 different types of tasks. One thing that is really important is the naming of this stuff. If you do a very limited number of tasks, so like for example, a car stereo shop, a machine shop, you really have maybe like a couple dozen tasks that you're doing to every single vehicle that comes in, like a head unit install, a car alarm install, speaker install, subwoofer, that sort of thing, right? It does not vary much beyond that. A machine shop is going to be, more like, hey, we're doing a bore and hone on a block, maybe a line hone, maybe we're doing cylinder head work, maybe we're doing a crank polish. It's a very limited number of tasks you're doing to basically everything. In those cases, you could just go through here and add all your tasks in here in one go, and you have your entire list. Also, we can even import Excel sheets. So if you already have a list of services that you offer, we can import those in that way as well. And if you're using QuickBooks, you can just sync those lists straight in from QuickBooks into MSA. Both QuickBooks Online and desktop, we can do that. So that way, if you already had a list from those different softwares, we can pull them in here and you can work from that. But I recommend taking into consideration the naming convention so that way you don't clutter it. And the way I do this, and I recommend to a lot of shops, is if you're doing like performance work on cars and you do a lot of variation of different things, use things like machine shop or suspension. And what that will allow you to do is it will let you know how to search for things in a job. So like if I need to do a control arm, I can type in suspension, and then I'll have a list of all the suspension work I offer. And then, or you could just type in control arm, but that might work as well. But if you just have control arm, sometimes people get confused as to which control arm it is. And so then if you're searching for upper control arm or lower control arm, so there's different variations of it. And it does look a lot cleaner if you have a good naming convention on it. And so think it through. If you have any questions on that, obviously just contact me and I can walk you through it. And the next step I'm going to do is add some parts. The default by clicking on this navigation is the parts to order page. Maybe you want to go through here and we want to add a part, an initial part. So I'm going to add a part. We're just going to call this. And maybe the part number is, and these things are $150 each. Maybe our wholesale price is $90. And we got to tax these guys. So we have a part in here now. You can just, same thing, you can add parts as you go inside of jobs, which is what I recommend. If you have a list from an Excel sheet, you can import it. If you have a list from QuickBooks, we can import that as well. And so parts list, generally people already have something, so it's pretty easy to just import it and have a list to begin with. But if you are going on the fly, you can do that as well. All right, so tasks, parts, these are going to be important to think it through and then go add as you go. Jobs here is the next step. This is going to be how you add your first job. So if you click on job, or you can also do this from the calendar. If you just click on the calendar on a day, this job screen will pop in. Or on the jobs page, you got estimates, active, completed. From here, I'm just going to click the little plus button, and the add job screen is going to pull up. And so going through this is pretty straightforward. If you have an existing customer, which we do not because this is a new shop, you could type their name here and it would pull a drop down, but there's none because we don't have any in here yet. In this case, you would have to go through and add them as you go. So we'll add my wife. If you wanted to put their phone number in here, you can. Just another fake number. You can put their email address in here. Both the phone number and email are important if you want to communicate with them. If you don't put anything in there, you will not be able to send text messages or emails, obviously. The next step, and I mentioned it early on, was you had the ability to select if you do cars always, sometimes, or never. I did forget to save it, so I think it's set to always. I'm always going to have this step 2, and I always have to put a year, make, model in here. If you have never for your vehicle type, it will skip this step and go straight to details. So in this case, I'm going to have to add a vehicle. So we'll do a 2021. Maybe we've got a Toyota. We'll run a Supra. What are they called? GR Supra. There you go. And we can do trims as well. We can now scan the VIN numbers of the barcode if you want. It just puts the number in here, so you don't have to manually type it in. But the next step is going to be the job creation. So I can create the job right here, and we're good to go. But just by clicking this create button. You have to have a customer, you have to have a vehicle, or optionally use a job title. This is the other alternative to not using vehicles, is the title. So work order number, like I mentioned on the shop setup settings, is this will be auto-populated with something if you want to use it. Otherwise, just leave it blank, and you can pull it from Quickbooks if you want, or you can just type in a number as you go. And when I was creating that task, the common task option was an option I checked. That appears here. You don't need to do this. If you're a machine shop or a car stereo shop with a limited number of tasks, I would just put all your tasks in this list, because when you're creating the job, you can just click this drop down and just select the items that you want to add to the job. Real quick and easy to do. And then the next 2 steps, scheduling, inspection, and waiver. The scheduling is going to be, if I had created the job from the calendar, this is the start and stop. You can also just manually put your own days in here. And then email or text message reminders if you want to track that stuff. Like I mentioned in the shop settings, this is the message that you set up in there. The inspection form, I showed you that on the shop settings as well. That's where this appears. This is for your like your pre-work inspection. And if you need to change it here, you just click the little clipboard icon, and then you can add or remove items from the checklist. And then the last step to creating this job is the waiver. If we had the legalese form, it would be right up here, but you can just sign it and presto. And now we have a job. And so you can see we've got the tasks right down below here. If you click on them, it will show you all the details. I mentioned in the user settings, you can have this already expanded if you want. So that's just a user setting. But that's the basics of getting going. And I have videos on how to do a job. I have videos on how to, make work orders. Everything else you'd ever need to do, I have separate videos for. But this is just allowing you to get going from creating the account to starting to add a job. And that's what you need to do. All right. If you have any other questions, just contact us. Thank you very much.